Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Sophia, your host. We're here in the main prayer hall of the Islamic Information Center, home of Let the Quran Speak. A recent Toronto Star article called Retail Therapy Hooked on Shopping reveals that shopping is now a daily indulgence for countless consumers. According to the article, we buy more but spend less. Shopping is a form of entertainment, a hobby, and even a form of self-medication. And yet, much of our clothes is made in places where there are poor labor conditions and meager worker rights. That's the only way we're able to get clothes so cheap. Should we rethink the way we shop? What responsibility do we bear for the suffering of those who make our clothes? And is our materialistic culture, an emphasis on appearance, somewhat to blame? With me to discuss our obsession with shopping, Dr. Shabir Ali. Brother Shabir, it's interesting when you look at the article itself that it includes a haul video on YouTube. So maybe you can talk about the haul video that you saw.
This is an interesting phenomenon that I noticed where a girl about in her early 20s is, or she is 20 years old, prepares a video showing what she has bought on that day.
Yes.
And this is a daily routine. Like, she goes out to shop every day and she comes back and she does one of these videos, puts it up on YouTube, and she gets thousands of hits to the extent that this becomes now a business for her, because the advertising obviously brings in money.
It's her only source of income, actually.
Yes. And so Google is paying her to do this. But even before Google started to pay her to do this, this was her routine. And it's not only she, but other people doing similar things as well, showing what they have bought for the day, whether it be clothing or some other accessories. So I find that to be a very interesting modern phenomenon, that people have this kind of wider conversation with the world. Hey, look at what I bought today.
Yes, and other aspects of the article were interesting too. The fact that in the past people would shop for a whole season and perhaps even for years, but now people shop, sometimes people shop every day, according to the article. People are buying things constantly, changing colors, changing styles constantly. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting to see how concepts change and how the retail industry actually, in a way, captivates us so that we can spend more money. In the introduction, you said that we buy more but spend less.
Clothing is much more disposable now.
Exactly.
The idea that you wear it once and then you throw it away, and perhaps you look for something else.
Yes, so the individual items become relatively cheaper given our gross earnings, but in fact we end up spending more overall, because we have to buy so much more and we have to change them on a regular basis, either because the fashions are presented differently from season to season, or not only that, but it's not either or, both because the fashion is changing constantly, and because also the clothing is not produced to be as durable as they once were. In the past, you might have, as you said, buy for the whole season once and would last you the whole season, and sometimes they're hand-me-downs because the clothes survive the people. But now the clothing is so flimsy that the buttons fall off very quickly and so on. So you need to buy more.
And the idea is that you don't want to keep wearing the same clothes, right? You don't want to appear outside with the same clothes over and over. You have to look different. True.
A book has been written on an interesting phenomenon where, for example, one large retailer was shown to regularly, on a weekly basis, change the colors that they display in their showcase. So they deliberately show new colors, even of the same thing. So it'll be the similar type of sweater, but a new color the next week. So you go back, you see this new color, and the idea is that you should be attracted to the new color and buy the new color. It's not it's not that you need a new sweater because you just bought one last week, but you should buy a new one this week because now, look, it's a different color.
I also found it interesting that Goodwill says that it receives many clothing donations with the price tag still on. So people are buying things but not necessarily wearing them. They're giving them away because they have no use for them anymore.
Yes, and this causes us now to reflect on the whole phenomenon of consumerism. It's a good thing that people are donating to Goodwill. But wouldn't the donated money have been of a far better use to the final recipients who perhaps need food more than money, for example? So is it necessary to buy things that we don't really need and will never use? But what draws us into this marketplace of buying so much and using buying so much of things that we will not use?
Well, the article says that it's become a form of entertainment, a hobby perhaps, and I guess this is a new way of looking at shopping, right? In the past you shop because you need something, but now you go because something looks interesting, something captures your fancy, you're bored, you go out and shop.
Yes, so it calls to attention that people have to reorient their lives to things which are more important. It was very important to many people, for example, to go to church on Sundays. And now the malls are open on Sundays, so people have no reason anymore to go to church. They think the mall is calling. And people need to go back to their religious roots and to think about their connectivity and their spirituality, their connectivity with God and the spiritual side of life. Muslims, of course, come to the prayers on Fridays, which is a very busy day, and they often have to leave work and business in order to come to the Friday prayer. This is so as to connect again with God. We can get ourselves drowned in materialism, trying to acquire the things of this life, and eventually either we'll have to give them away to Goodwill, or we ourselves will die and leave these things behind. The message of all of the prophets is that we should look forward to the life hereafter and the good things that God has created for us in that life. So if you want clothes and fineries, well, according to the Muslim teachings, this will all be available for you in paradise. You don't have to acquire them here in this life, but to live a good life and be charitable. If you have excess, God has given you out of His grace and mercy, He has given you excess wealth. You've gone past your daily needs. Well, share with your neighbor. Give to somebody who is poor. Support people who are struggling to eat in various parts of the world.
Of course, there should also always be a balance, right? You don't want to tell people not to shop. Not to care about how they look, right? But there should be a balance in terms of how they do.
And that balance, I believe, is struck very nicely in the Quran, because whereas you might think a religious message should always say, "Oh no, have nothing to do with this world, only the life hereafter," that's not the case of the Quran at all. Because in the 7th chapter, in the 25th verse, the Quran says that we should not forbid people from enjoying the good things, the zina, it is called, beautification. It goes with everything that looks good, and the good food that God has provided for His creatures. So all of the good things in life, this actually has been created by God and made available to people to be enjoyed. But we should enjoy in moderation. And we should not become so immersed in these enjoyments that we forget the greater thing, which is the spirituality, which will prepare us for life with God and the life hereafter.
Do you think it's also important for us to care about where and how our clothes are being made?
I definitely. There have been recently many articles showing that much of what we wear in the developing and developed parts of the world are actually produced in very harsh working conditions by people in other parts of the world.
In some cases by children.
Sometimes by children, 8 years old, 10 years old. Children in Bangladesh, for example, producing the clothing that is being sold in some of the great and upper class stores in the economically developed countries. So what are we to make of this? We are enjoying these things at a very harsh price. It's not the money that we pay, but the difficulty that others are going through to produce this. Now, we should be helping those people rather than to be benefiting from their sweat and the difficulties that they go through.
And I suppose we should also hold the stores to hire, or the companies to higher standards then, to ask them what are they doing for those workers?
That's right. They should be buying their clothing and getting it produced in factories that meet working conditions that are acceptable to us. They may not be on absolute par with working conditions in the economically developed countries, because everything takes time and evolution is gradual. But they should be far above the demeaning conditions that we read about, where some people, for example, may suffer death in a factory burning because the fire standards are so poor. The fire safety standards, that is. So we should, yes, you're right, put pressure on the local retailers to have the goods that we're going to buy from them produced in acceptable conditions, because there is a moral price that goes with this. It's not just simply the price that we pay to obtain the garment we love so much, but we want to have it in good conscience, and we don't want to sacrifice our moral principles for what we wear and eventually throw away.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, do you think there's too much of an emphasis on the outward, on the appearance in our culture, that makes us go shopping constantly?
True. The article that you refer to shows that some people watch some TV shows and they see the actors on the TV shows going out and buying very expensive things. And they now want to copy these actors, and they want to buy the similar things. Even though they themselves cannot afford these things, they go into very difficult situations, they get into debt, they sometimes become personally bankrupt because they have bought things copying the actors on TV shows. And there are some TV shows that show women, for example, doing a lot of shopping. And people viewing these shows try to copy these actors, not realizing that they're putting themselves into greater difficulty. So it is important for people to, again, take a step back, to put things in perspective, and not allow themselves to be influenced by this culture of consumerism.
So I guess it's important for us to be aware of how our marketers are influencing our decisions.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you for your time, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, how do we know Islam is the truth?